Take her home.
Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for checking it out. If you do like my content, please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. If there is a topic that you would like me to research and then discuss, please leave a comment below. So I also want you to know that I actually have like a bit of an anxiety tick, and so I say a lot. I am working on that. It's also very annoying for me, so I apologize in advance. So part of the reasons why I do these videos is for my own healing journey as well, from childhood trauma and adult trauma and complex PTSD. So if I can, even if my videos help, at least one person, that would mean the world to me. Even if it just, explains to people, like if they're like feeling, vulnerable and they're not understanding their feelings. I hope some of my videos can clarify, what those feelings are and why those feelings are actually important, and it doesn't mean you're actually weak or anything like that. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for checking it out. If you do like my content, please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. If there is a topic that you would like me to research and then discuss, please leave a comment below. So I also want you to know that I actually have like a bit of an anxiety tick, and so I say a lot. I am working on that. It's also very annoying for me, so I apologize in advance. So part of the reasons why I do these videos is for my own healing journey as well, from childhood trauma and adult trauma and complex PTSD. So if I can, even if my videos help, at least one person, that would mean the world to me. Even if it just, explains to people, like if they're like feeling, vulnerable and they're not understanding their feelings. I hope some of my videos can clarify, what those feelings are and why those feelings are actually important, and it doesn't mean you're actually weak or anything like that. So today's video, before I get into that, actually, I'd just like you to know that my videos are not just my opinion. Some of, obviously the content comes from some of my personal experiences. That's part of the healing process, is that sharing a little bit about my own personal experience as well, and trying to help others out there to pretty much say, hey, you're not alone. Other people have been through similar, or sometimes even like, I won't say the same because everybody's experience is different, but we're basically saying, hey, me too, I feel you, which is pretty much on point for one of the topics we're talking about today, which is empathy. So today's video, a lot of my research was pretty much done on Dr Brenne Brown. She is actually a fantastic researcher and quite a high ranking academic. What is different about Brenne Brown, and I'll link some of, I think one of her TED Talks, she became famous for one of her TED Talks on vulnerability, and so, I guess as a academic and, a researcher, what comes to my mind is they're going to be dry and kind of boring, if I'm honest. But she's not at all. She's quite funny. She's very real and very honest. And she's Texan, so not saying Texan people swear a lot, but she does a little bit. So you just need to be maybe a little bit aware of that. So today's video, is going to be on vulnerability, shame, empathy and courage. A lot of people, obviously feel shame, right? And what is shame? Shame is like the feeling of not good enough, and basically shame is like feeling like you're alone, like you're on your own in whatever situation you're going through, and that can be just a very isolating and awful feeling to feel. Vulnerability is basically the willingness to be vulnerable and showing up and just like letting others in, basically. But you can't have courage without vulnerability. So, you know, one of the reasons why I guess, you know, we don't really want to be vulnerable is because we don't want that feeling of shame, scarcity, fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. You know, all those words are fairly scary even to say, right? But, you know, we can't feel or give, you know, love or joy or have that sense of belonging without being vulnerable. And that's, you know, pretty much the bottom line of it. But obviously I'm going to go into that a bit more. But yeah, so pretty much like, I guess a question that we either ask ourselves unconsciously or consciously pretty much every day is, what are we afraid of and whose fault is it? Now, you know, you might think, I don't ask myself that. You kind of do, because every day not every day, but when you wake up, you're like, okay, well, you know, say for instance, okay, I'll give an example of, like, from myself. You know, when the first time, like, my daughter's 22 now, but when I remember the first time she said, Mum, I want to walk to school by myself. I'm like, you know, okay, what am I scared of here? And whose fault is it if something goes wrong? Okay, well, she's walking to school. Okay, and what I'm scared of is like being hit by a car, being kidnapped, you know, being bullied, like falling over, like, oh my gosh, it's just like a crazy amount that you're scared of, right? And whose fault is it? Mine. I believed it mine, okay, because I let her walk to school, you know, but in reality, you know, you have to let go of the reins sometimes, you know, but basically asking those questions and those two particular questions, you know, are pretty much kind of the key indicators of a culture of scarcity. Now, you're probably thinking, what's scarcity? You know, I've always known what scarcity is, but I didn't know the actual, you know, core breakdown of or kind of what scarcity culture was, right? So scarcity culture, to bottom line it, is never enough. Now you can fill in kind of the blanks there because there's multiple, you know, things that like, you know, we feel of never enough, right? So there's never good enough, never safe enough, never certain enough, never relevant enough, never smart enough, never perfect enough, like the list goes on, right? And like we all feel these things. Like if you know, a functioning human being, we all feel these things at some stage, not all of them, but some of them. Like I definitely feel these things all the time. I always feel like I'm not good enough. You know, I'm never going to be good enough to succeed, or you know, I'm not pretty enough. I'm never going to be pretty enough. You know, and for a while, you know, especially as a child, I'm like, I'm never going to feel safe enough. You know, so and always filled with that uncertainty. Like, you know, if I launch this business, like, what if it fails? Like, you know, these are all kind of, they swirl around in your head, right? And because of kind of this scarcity culture, we've kind of got to this point, I suppose, of somehow in the world we live in at the moment, it seems like anybody with an ordinary life has become, it's kind of become synonymous with a meaningless life. How shit is that? Can I say shit? You know, isn't that like, what a terrible feeling, right? But it's kind of become quite clear that extraordinary means relevant. It shouldn't, but like, it seems like, you know, if somebody's kind of leading an ordinary life, like, you know, you get up, go to work, take the kids, this is what we tell ourselves, by the way, you know, in the world today, you know, oh, my life is meaningless, like, you know, well, why am I doing this? Why am I getting up in the morning? Why am I going to work? Like, you know, you're not finding the joy in every day, you know, and, you know, then we see people who are extraordinary and you're like, oh, they're relevant. People see them, like, you know, they've got, I don't know, TikTok following a stupid amount or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And And, you know, and then you kind of really look at, like, you know, some of these influencers and stuff like that. You look at them and go, I'm not even sure that you're that intelligent. Like, you know, really, you became famous and you make hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars for that? Like, you know, and that's kind of like, you know, that's kind of the culture, you know, that we're kind of breeding a little bit at the moment. You know, we kind of, our response to that, right? Our response to going, you know, basically like having that feeling of going, you know, unless you're extraordinary and you're relevant, this filters into our DNA and becomes the message, right? It becomes the messaging for us. And that's a terrible message to send, not only to ourselves, but, you know, our future as well, like our children and our children's children. You know, that's definitely not the message I want to be sending to anybody. Like, you know, nobody's life is ordinary. No, I believe that nobody's life is ordinary. You make of it what you make of it. But I guess the reason why we kind of like, you know, our response to that, you know, is, I guess we armor up. We go out into the world every day and we armor up. And, you know, we armor up and we're going to go, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kick some butt, but I'm not going to let anyone see who I actually am. And, you know, I'm going to protect myself against things that hurt me the most, like judgment, criticism, blame, being ridiculed, you know, then I'll be safe. Are you getting of this? I am. Right? I guess even though when we armor up, what are we protecting? Are we protecting our bodies? Are we protecting our head? No, we're protecting our heart. So we armor up pretty much to stop ourselves from being hurt. Yeah? Because we want to feel love and we want that feeling of belonging. In the absence of love and belonging, there's suffering. And who wants to suffer, right? So we believe we can protect our sense of being, you know, lovable, you know, acceptable and worth connection with our armor. But honestly, it doesn't work. Basically, to, you know, have the capacity for wholeheartedness, it can't be greater than our willingness to be brokenhearted. Yeah? Which is a terrible thing, but true. We can only love and be loved as much as we are willing to have our hearts broken. And nobody wants to have their heart broken, but it is part of life, you know, unless you completely shut yourself off. And obviously, you know, walking through the world with armor around our hearts, you know, doesn't actually protect us from pain. We like to think it does, but it doesn't. Yeah. I'm guilty of this. Like, you know, for the longest time, you know, I was like, Jodie, you can't be vulnerable. You can't show any vulnerability. You know, I was okay for other people to be vulnerable. Actually, I'd encourage them to be vulnerable so I could, you know, help them, etc. But you can't be vulnerable. You can't be vulnerable. Vulnerability is weakness, and you can't be weak. Like, you know, and you know, as a child, obviously, and even obviously as a teenager, I was, you know, like, you can't get hurt if you're not vulnerable. You know, so don't show vulnerability. Be tough. Be tough. You know, you kind of close yourself off to a lot of people when you kind of become that person. And I was a tiny person. As a teenager, I was very small. Actually, nobody believed I was in high school. So, you know, I you know, spent my time proving that I was strong and I was tough and I could compete with people in sports and stuff like that, and I was actually fairly decent at it. But you know, but I fought for that. So I know I got off track a little bit there, but basically having armor, walking through the world with armor on, it doesn't protect you from pain. I definitely still felt pain, you know, and I still got hurt, and, you know, all of that. It doesn't actually protect you from pain. So it blocks us from, you know, what in vulnerability takes us to, you know, and I guess the vulnerability is kind of the path to like belonging, love, joy, you know, intimacy, you know, trust, innovation, creativity, and the biggest one, courage. Yeah. Being vulnerable takes you to courage. You can't have courage without being vulnerable. Yeah, that took me a while, kind of to sink that in a little bit. I'm like, yes, I can. I don't need to be vulnerable to have courage. I don't need to be vulnerable to be brave. Yeah, you kind of do. Like, you know, you kind of need to be vulnerable to, you know, try something new, because you don't know the outcome, but you're showing up and you're trying. You know, you need to be vulnerable to, you know, have a child, you know, because, you know, you don't know how that kid's going to turn out. You don't know day to day what's going to happen. You know, so vulnerability is like the groundwork, the I guess the stability struts to our whole house. And without it, that was like a terrible bird sound, but that was meant to be like your house crashing down. But so, you know, so basically without vulnerability we can't have courage. Yeah. And that took me a while to, like, you know, really believe that, I suppose. But then when I think back on, you know, situations and stuff like that, and I'm just like, you know, yeah, it is kind of true, you know. So I guess, and honestly, one of the, you know, I have a great capacity for empathy, but one of the greatest casualties of invulnerability is empathy. You know, because I guess some of the blocks to empathy, you know, that are born out of the lack of vulnerability, are, you know, sympathy, and blame. So I seem to kind of have this thing for some reason, and I'm really not sure why, but like, when I go to a cafe or a restaurant, and you know, sometimes I'm by myself, especially when it's during the day, because I own my own business. So all of my friends and stuff, you know, are at 9-to-5 jobs. But usually when I go to a cafe, I'm doing work of some form. You know, I'm usually writing or something. People come and sit with me. They ask first, but yeah, people seem to come up and sit with me. And, you know, I guess to a degree I have to have us, you know, be open to being a little bit vulnerable to that stranger, and to let them kind of, you know, I guess, you know, sit down with me. And so I'm not really sure why they, you know, do that. And then I kind of had a, you know, a think about it, and to a degree, like, they're definitely showing vulnerability by asking me if they can sit with me. And I think often it's because, you know, nobody wants to be alone, right? Well, to my knowledge, like, I definitely don't. I mean, I like my alone time, but I don't want to be alone. Loneliness is crap. Like, it feels awful. And you know, whilst I don't really mind sitting at a cafe by myself because I'm usually working, and obviously when somebody comes and sits with me, I don't work, which is okay. You know, I just kind of put it off. But they're vulnerable by coming and sitting with me, and it's not like it's men, it's women, you know, sometimes it's a teenager, you know, which is, you know, you kind of have that moment where you're like, do I want somebody else's kid sitting with me? Is this going to be weird? You know, but they don't want to be sitting alone, you know. It's like the kid in the playground sitting alone eating lunch, you know. It's I guess being grouped with, like, oh, you're a loner, like if you're sitting, you know, eating by yourself at lunchtime, you know, in the playground, where, you know, when you're an adult, it kind of carries with you, right? You know, and obviously I'm secure enough in myself that it actually doesn't bother me that much. If I was in like a fancy restaurant or something like that, like, yeah, well, I don't want to sit by myself, like, especially like on Valentine's Day or something. Hell no, I'm hiding in my house. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, for some reason people come and sit with me and they come and ask, and that's showing vulnerability and courage. So there had to be walking up to me, feeling vulnerable, and then going, and having the courage to ask, can I sit with you? I have never said no, by the way. I've always said yes, because I love meeting new people, you know, from all walks of life, young, old, male, female, whatever you identify as. I'm happy for you to sit with me. You know, I've had some amazing stories that they've told me, and, you know, helped as well. Like, you know, they ask your advice and, you know, all of that. But really, it's company. They just want company, you know, and I think that is amazing. You know, to have that vulnerability, you know, to go, oh, I don't want to sit by myself, because, you know, sitting by yourself, you do feel very vulnerable sometimes, and then having the courage to come and ask me. You know, I'm really sorry if you cannot hear that. Like, there is one heck of a storm raging outside. You know, I may actually have to refilm this. But the reason I'm telling this, that part of the story, is I was sitting at a cafe the other day, and I was actually doing my research on, you know, the video I'm doing today, and I had papers out and stuff like that, and this guy said to me, do you mind if I sit with you? Now, one of the reasons he asked me if I minded if I sat with him is because the place was quite busy, so there might not have been seats available. I don't know, I don't really care. You know, but yeah, his name was Ben. Anyway, hey Ben, if you're watching this, you won't be watching this. So anyway, he sat down and he said, oh, you're working? I said, no, it's all right. I'm just doing research. He said, what for? And I said, oh, just a YouTube video that I'm going to do. He's like, oh, what on? And I said, you know, vulnerability, shame, you know, courage, you know, and a piece of paper that he saw that I had sympathy and empathy. And he's like, isn't sympathy and empathy the same thing? And I went, well, actually, no, it's not. And I'll tell you why. I said, can I tell you why? And he's like, yeah, tell me why. He said, I always thought it was the same thing. You know, you feel sorry for somebody. I went, no. So, you know, sympathy drives disconnection. You know, it's I'm feeling for you. Yeah? Empathy fuels connection, which is, you know, it's a feeling with people. Like, me too. I've felt like that before. You know, me too. I've gone through something similar where, well, where, you know, sympathy is like, oh, yeah, that's too bad. You know, I'll give you an example that Brenne Brown said, and basically it's like there's this massive pit and somebody's down the bottom of the pit. And if you show them sympathy, you look down, you go, oh yeah, that's deep. That's real deep. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to be getting down there. No, yeah, I feel bad for you. Do you want a sandwich? That's kind of sympathy, right? Empathy is like, you're in the pit with them. Yeah, I can feel how deep this is. Yeah, this is bad, but, you know, let's work together, we can get out of here, kind of thing. You know, that's kind of, you know, what I'm getting at. And the other block to empathy is blame. Yeah, blame. Probably when I have, and by the way, he was very intrigued by it, and he was asking me a bunch of other questions that I actually didn't know answers for yet, because, well, not proper answers, because I hadn't done that research yet, but we had, like, yeah, other discussions. Anyway, I digress. When I feel blame, generally it's me blaming myself for things. It's self-blame, which is not healthy at all, but we all do it, right? I don't often blame other people. I'm not going to say I never blame other people for things, because, you know, you kind of place blame where blame should be placed. That's probably, you know, a healthier way of looking at it. But really, Blame is pointless. Yeah, I'm just going to say that. I think, this personal opinion, I think blame is pointless. Where does it get you? Honestly, where does blaming somebody get you? Does it get you a result? Does it make the situation better? Or does it make it worse? Does it push people away or does it bring them in? I would say it pushes people away, right? So blame is the discharging of discomfort and pain and anger. Yeah. Because it gives us some kind of resemblance of control. And if that's your reasoning for it, is to have some kind of control, that's not good. Like, it's, it has an inverse relationship with accountability. Now, accountability by definition is a vulnerable process. Being accountable for a situation or for something is being vulnerable, because you have to be vulnerable and say, hey, my bad, I didn't realize I was doing that, I'll take the blame for that, and we say that all the time, but you don't actually have to use the word blame, right? You just say, my bad, that's on me. I'm really sorry that I made you feel that way. That was not my intent. And let me tell you, I definitely, have been, accountable, even, in past relationships and stuff like that. I've, taken accountability there. And at times I should have taken accountability. Yeah. And I didn't. I didn't blame anyone, but I didn't take accountability either, because I was kind of unaware of my behavior, if I'm honest, and that's different. So, basically accountability by definition is vulnerable, yeah, or vulnerability. You've got to, it's a vulnerable process. To be accountable for something, you have to go through a vulnerable process to come to the conclusion that you're accountable for something, yeah? So, if you have these blocks, sympathy and pretty much blame, and you can't have empathy. If you have sympathy and blame, you lack the capacity to have empathy, because it blocks empathy, yeah? Let me tell you, if you are empathizing with somebody, rarely will the sentence start with, well, at least. Yeah? Have you ever had that? You're telling this incredibly emotional thing that, has happened to you or is happening to you, and they're like, well, at least, like, okay, for example, hey Susan, like, I think my, marriage is over. And she turns around and says, well, at least you have a marriage. That's not empathy. It's kind of almost sarcasm. Well, at least you have a marriage. Like, no, don't ever, that's not empathy. Don't ever do that. That's somebody, they're trying to show a silver lining. You don't need to show a silver lining. And don't get me wrong, they're not doing it to be mean 90% of the time. They're not doing it to be mean or cruel or condescending or anything like that. They simply don't know how to react sometimes, with empathy. They don't know that, they're like, oh crap, like, I want to make them feel okay, like, oh, this is all right, we'll get through it, like, whatever. But instead they come off as like, a little bit sarcastic, I guess, and they go, oh, the silver lining to this is, at least you have a marriage. Oh no, not if it's ending, I'm just saying. But or oh, Alfred is gonna get expelled from school. Well, at least Minnie is an A grade student. Well, no, that's not empathy either. Like, so empathy is pretty much just showing up. Now, showing up can mean showing up and basically saying, me too, like me too. It's feeling with them. Yeah. So, when somebody is sharing something really emotional and vulnerable and deep with you, you don't need to try and make things better. Yeah, we're not looking to make things better. Yeah, so actually sometimes the most profound and eloquent example that I can give of like empathy is often without any words, you know, but simply by touch instead. And I'm going to give you an example of that, and I'll finish with this. So last week I went through something pretty horrific, you know, and you know, it kind of, I was already doing my research on this video, but now it's quite a lot more relevant to me personally. But you know, what I went through was quite painful. You know, it was violent, and it was fairly devastating for me. And in that, I guess, the moment when it was happening, you know, I did feel shame. I felt shame for letting myself be vulnerable. You know, I'm like, Jodie, why did you put yourself in this position? This is, you know, what were you thinking? Like, you know, you're better than this. You know, you are usually more cautious than this. You know, why didn't you listen to your gut? Like, you know, all these went through my head, right? And obviously, you know, part of when I was going through it, like I was saying, you know, when you're going through it, you're not thinking that. I definitely, the actual fear was definitely what was going through my head at the time, the pure fear. And I felt powerless, and I felt very weak, you know. And when I was talking to my therapist, Chris, and he said, well, Jodie, no, you weren't powerless and you weren't weak. Yeah, in that moment you were vulnerable, but there's no shame in that. You know, there's no shame in being vulnerable, because you were vulnerable. I had the courage to react and defend myself, and in my self-defense, I, you know, saved myself, you know. And so I kind of went, oh yeah, I didn't really think about it like that at all. All I was thinking was, you know, you're an idiot, like, why'd you put yourself in this position, you know. But in reality, you know, it could have happened to anybody. You know, you can have all the tools in your arsenal of self-defense and like awareness, and you know, I mean, I've done, you know, body language courses and you know, micro expressions and all of that, and I knew something was wrong. I did, like, you know, my gut was telling me, and I ignored my gut because I assumed it was me, that you know, I was just anxious. And obviously in reality it wasn't me, and the person was actually quite dangerous. But you know, the point is, you know, in that time, like, I was feeling vulnerable and stuff like that, and I felt shame, and I was like, I'm not telling anybody about this. No, I'm not telling anyone about this. I'm not telling anybody what happened. And I just was hoping and praying it wouldn't make the news, you know. That was pretty much, I'm like, you know, I hope that nobody finds out. And then you know, obviously I kind of sat with it for a while, and you know, you're sitting with it, and you're like, you're crying, and you feel worse, and you know, and then you're just like, you know, I'm always telling my friends and my family, you know, there's no shame in being vulnerable. There's no, you know, if you ever need me, I'm here, and stuff like that. And then I wasn't practicing that myself. I wasn't reaching out to anybody and asking for help, and I really needed help. I really needed empathy, and I really needed, you know, somebody to say, you're going to be okay, right? And so, you know, I did reach out and to people in my trusted circle, and I told them. And I had a friend come over, and they didn't need to say anything. They literally just held me, and we cried together, you know, and that is empathy. Now, it's not that my friend had been through the exact same situation, but they've been through something that made them feel how I felt. Fear, vulnerable, shame, and obviously courage. And so no words needed to be spoken. And sometimes if you want to show empathy to somebody, you don't have to talk. You don't have to say anything. Just reach out, squeeze their hand, give them a hug. You know, that's all you need, and let them talk. You know, and you know that's empathy. That's showing empathy. So you know, in conclusion, basically, you know, we kind of want to squash shame a little bit, right? We want to squash shame out a little bit because, you know, we all feel it. We've all gone through shame. We've all felt shame, but, you know, there's no real point to shame. It doesn't really get you anywhere. And I guess the biggest thing that can kill shame is empathy. You know, you put an amount of shame in a petri dish, and kind of it will thrive, right? And then you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish and add the same amount of empathy, it will die, because it can't survive. Because when you show empathy to somebody, you're saying, hey, me too. And shame is about feeling alone, like in this on your own. When somebody says me too, you're no longer on your own. Yeah. So I think as a society and in the world today, we really do need to one, not be not have that stigma attached to vulnerability, like you know, especially with men, you know, oh no, I'll be weak if I show vulnerability, I can't show vulnerability, you know, I need to be strong for my family. You being vulnerable is lead you to having courage to be there for your family, having courage to, you know, protect your family if like somebody breaks in. You know, like there is no shame in a man being vulnerable. There shouldn't be. And you know, we need vulnerability. Vulnerability is the foundation to you know, being functioning adults. And you know, without kind of vulnerability, there's no innovation, there's no creativity. Simple as that. And we need creativity, we need innovation in our lives. So in conclusion, it's okay to feel vulnerable, and it's okay to show empathy. Empathy should be shown, you know, and you know, vulnerability is key to the rest of our feelings. So, you know, I hope, you know, my explaining wasn't too blah, 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 blah. It's how I understand, you know, all of these things. You know, I guess like, you know, take your armour off. Take your armour off, show yourself to the world. Be there, show up, and, you know, give, you know, show empathy, be vulnerable, you know, because you can't expect other people to be vulnerable and give you empathy if you can't do it yourself. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this has been helpful. I am so very grateful if you would subscribe, and absolutely if you have a topic you would like me to talk about, please, yeah, send me you know, a DM, or you know, pop it down in the comments below. I will also link Brenne Brown's you know, whatever TED Talks, you know, on vulnerability, and that she will obviously explain a lot better than I have. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.